Most of my research students want to become academics, and as we all know, it's a tough world out there. So I work with them to develop the skills they might need to make their CV look good, and to demonstrate that they've got lots of experience in lots of different areas. So some of my students teach on the course, they're paid to do that, also paid to come along to course development meetings, that kind of thing. Some of them do some admin work, so they work on the translation studies blog and things like that. So that helps with their admin and their teaching. And then I encourage them to, of course, go to conferences and present papers and things like that. One thing I do know is many of the PhD students, they enjoy all that work, but it takes up a lot of time. So when they're in the writing up period and the third year, I do tell them that perhaps some of those extra activities need to be cut down so they can focus on the PhD.
I think it's important for students to get experience of presenting at conferences, to get chances to meet researchers that they may want to work with in the future, and just to increase their profile. So I do encourage students to present at meetings, and I like to spend time with them preparing their presentations with them and making sure they practice in front of an audience where they're going to get criticism, but constructive criticism. It's really important these days that students publish. So on the whole, the kind of thesis chapters are generally aimed at being scientific publications, and wherever I can, I like to have a little bit of money left so that if there is time at the end of their thesis and they've still got things that are not quite finished, then if there's just a little bit of leeway for them to finish those things, get them submitted, then that helps them, and it definitely helps me too.
In terms of enhancing future career prospects, well, I think now personal development planning is obviously part of the annual review, and that I've found extremely helpful. You know, that it gives you the opportunity to sit down and reflect on what's happened during the year and what a student might need in the coming cycle. And I've found that, you know, that there's an increasing set of opportunities out there within the university that students can use, and that's really helpful. Also, publication is increasingly important. I think when people are going out after the PhD, they've got to have, I think, at least one good article, journal article or publication out there to enhance their job prospects. And there you're into that difficult trade-off between the demands of actually writing the all-important PhD and getting an article out. But I really do encourage people, once they've got that data and they're starting to analyse it and write up those final chapters, then it's important to try and get some of that out there, as well as, you know, disseminating it at conferences, because I think that's absolutely crucial. That's where, you know, your reputation starts to develop. That's where you make the all-important contacts that can help you both in the further research, but also when it comes to the career beyond.
I've really tried to involve my students in parts of my own work so that they get authentic experiences which are either research focused, teaching focused, but depending on what it is that they want to do in future. So I had one student who, because she was researching the subject area that matched a particular project I was about to start on, we were able to involve her really meaningfully in that project as a team member. So she was able to be involved in a British Council funded research project going out to Iraq to help implement a project looking at student-centred learning in the curriculum and evaluating that project. So that was fantastic, but that wouldn't have been suitable for another student I have where that wouldn't have been her particular expertise. So for somebody else, I was very fortunate at a point when actually I had been sick, but I'd been invited to give a keynote and run some workshops at a Swedish university. And I thought, this is a perfect opportunity for one of my PhD students who's actually, she's probably more up to date than I am in the reading in that area. And she's very, very capable. And I thought, actually, if they're prepared to invite her to do some of this work, then that's a fantastic experience for her. And she was able to do that, and that went really, really well.
If you can develop people's independence as researchers, make them capable researchers, then that's really pushing them on the way to having their own careers. And I think the other thing, as I've said, is having a really good project, because what is crucial for them is getting publications. So if they can get publications and good ones, then that will be the first real stepping stone to their career.
I think there is no magic bullet to help the career prospects of your students. I think the most important thing is to give them a good experience in order that they finish with a very strong PhD or research degree, and that will do the best for the career that you can do. Equally, I think it also helps to be generous. I think you should be generous with your contacts. I think you should be generous with your opportunities. If you can invite a student along to a meeting where you think there will be other academics, companies present, bring them along, even if they're not necessarily going to contribute directly, and introduce them around. They will appreciate it, and you never know what links will be made. These students will often become academics in their own right.
What I think is most useful is if you can really from day one talk with students about the different directions that they could potentially go in, so that you're opening up a range of possibilities. Now, you know, some of them will come in wanting to do a particular thing. They want to teach, they want to work in a museum, they want to do public policy, and that's great, and you can then work with them on that track. But some of them, I think, you know, sort of think they can go only in one direction, and then are sort of pleasantly surprised when they can do other things that people will value their research and communication skills. So one of the issues is just to make students aware of what the options are, and one of the things that I've been lucky enough to do is have former students that I can now put people in touch with who are doing interesting things.
It's not about having somebody who's going to be a pair of hands for you and do all your experiments for you. It's really about trying to develop their independence and their particular skills. You want somebody who's going to go out, think for themselves, use their initiative, go to someone else's lab, and be able to start their own careers. And so my aim is really to facilitate that development.
I do encourage all the students that we have to take advantage of everything that the university has got to offer. That means, not, for example, not the seminars only in my school, but the seminars that exist elsewhere, the various social events that we have, the enormous networks that can be created by interaction. I try to encourage students where it's possible to create links with organisations across the city, if they can possibly get a little bit of part-time work within the constraints of the funding regime that they're under. And there are limitations often. Particularly for international students, sometimes there's huge demand for their services because sometimes they bring things which are very useful to certain organisations within the city.
I think there are two dimensions to enhancing career prospects of research students. One is the training that we give them, so that they are properly equipped to deal with different methods and to use different kinds of resources, etc. The second is to ensure that they understand what the employability skills that those skills give them. So it's fine being able to do research methods, but then you have to articulate that to an employer that you have those particular skills. So I see supervision sessions actually as also part of professional development and try to tie them up in both. So if a student has identified a new resource and used it, I say, well, what have you found out about yourself from doing that? And then finding a way in which they can then articulate their learning through their CVs at the end of the process is something that I try to introduce.